So we're learning, this is the first Maamar in Teireh of Purim. It's a pretty long Maamar and it has two biyurim, a commentary and then a second commentary. We're going to start with the Maamar and we'll see how it goes. In the meantime, we're learning the Maamar. We'll see how this all plays itself out to Hashem over the foreseeable period. But I want to begin with a couple of Purim Dika Maisis. The first is a story with the Megilah Rebbe. We know that the Alter Rebbe was a Malchus. The Alter Rebbe used to read the Torah himself. And the Alter Rebbe's Kriyas HaTorah was extraordinary. It was very, very, very bediuk, incredibly precise. It's brought down that the Alter Rebbe would repeat a pasuk to correct a shini in the taimim, a shini in the trop, which you don't have to do at all. And you can be assured that the Alter Rebbe made a shini in the trop. It's not because he made a mistake or he forgot. There were other cheshbenis. It was very, very precise. The Baditchev Harav, Rabbi Yossi Paltiel, spoke to the Baruch Mezbush, who was the Baal Shem Tov's grandson and a very, very strong critic of the Alter Rebbe. So the Baditchev said to the Baruch Mezbush, Ich weiß nicht, was ihr wollt von meinem Mechutten. I don't know what you want from my Mechutten, from the Alter Rebbe. Ich habe ihm gehört lehen, and I heard him read the Torah. Und ist gewesen Kulei Lamata und hat nicht ausgelost kein ein Tag. Ist gewesen Kulei Lamaila und hat nicht ausgelost kein ein Tag Lamata. He was Kulei Lamaila, completely in the heavens, and he didn't omit a crown Lamata. So the Alter Rebbe's Kriyas HaTorah was very, very precise. And of course, the Megilah Rebbe was used to hearing his father lane, like you have the story in the Yem Yem about the Teichacha and so forth. And when Alter Rebbe was nostalgic, the Alter Rebbe didn't lane anymore. Alter Rebbe passed by Chavdalah Tevis, yeah? 2 months later was Purim. So Abal Keira, other than the Alter Rebbe, read the Megilah Sester. After the Megilah, the Megilah Rebbe went over to him and said to him, oh, Azar Sheina Maise, what a great story. I never heard such a story in my life. Azar Sheina Maise, what a wonderful drama. I never heard such a drama. So the Chassid, the Balkeda, was obviously taken aback. And he said to Megilah Rebbe, the Megilah was 40 years old, yeah? You hear that story every year? He says, no, this story I never heard. The Maise came on again. Because when the Alter Rebbe laned, you heard a very, very different story of the Megilah, as we're going to get to momentarily. That's one vart, one sipur. And the second vart is also with the Megilah Rebbe. It involves Megilah Rebbe. It's a chassidische vart there. That the Megilah Rebbe was traveling once, and it says where he was. Maybe it was Kremenchuk, but I don't remember. Megilah Rebbe was traveling, and came Purim. So there was a big shul, and a lot of guests came to be with the Rebbe, the Megilah Rebbe. And they asked the Megilah Rebbe who should read the Megilah Sester, who should read the Megilah. And there are a number of candidates. And the Megilah Rebbe pointed to a particular Yid, a Malamed, that he should read the Megilah. This Malamed was a Chassidish Yid, very Chassidish Yid. And in the Megilah Sester, you have that moment where Haman comes into Achashverosh thinking he wants to hang Mordechai. And before he gets a chance to speak, Achashverosh speaks to him. And he says to him, what should be done to a person whom the king, the Melech, wishes to honor? So the Megillah says, Haman said to himself in his own heart, who would the king wish to give honor to, preciousness to, more than I? In other words, he was a very, very big Baal Gaiva, was very, very self-assured. And he was convinced that the king wants to honor somebody, it has to be him. So of course he proposed what we're going to be learning in this Maamar. Yaveu, Levush, Malchus, asher Levush beHamelech, Vesus, asher Rochav alav HaMelech, v'asher Nitan kesem Malchus bereishet. And of course the next pasuk says, V'nosna Levush v'Sus al yadish mitzari apartamim. V'elbishu es ish HaMelech chafetz b'karei, v'karu lefonav kochi asal ish asher HaMelech chafetz b'karei. Haman is convinced that Achashverosh wants to honor somebody, it's him. So he makes this very, very grandiose proposal. He should take the king's crown and the king's tunic and the king's horse, and that one of the most prominent men of the kingdom should dress him in the tunic of the king and put him on the horse of the king, and then the second time around the crown is omitted because Achashverosh began to cringe. I'll get to this momentarily. And this minister should march through the streets saying this is what's done to a person, kocha, also lo ish, to a man, asher hamelech chafetz bikar, the king desires his honor. And of course, the rest of the story, of course, is that Achashverosh says to Haman, Mahir kachas Levush, v'esastuzka shadibalta al p'apel dover, and do it to Mordechai, and this was the beginning and the end for Haman. But this particular passage has an arrogance which has few equals in the entire Tanakh, where Haman says to himself, the Torah testifies, that Haman says to himself, L'mi yachbetz hamelech l'aseh yekor yeser mimeni. So the Maamar was reading the Megilah, and obviously he was paying attention to Pshutei Shel Mikra, to Ivrim Etayich. So when he got to this pasuk, where it says, L'mi mach yachbetz hamelech l'aseh yekor yeser mimeni, again Magishrei, he cried out, Feh klippe, Feh klippe. Achsidish yid, Feh yesh klippe. And he continued to read. Now it's Yadua, it's very well known, that the Megilah Rebbe had a deep intolerance for his spoilers. Not only his lahavos, but even his spoilers. His avoida was that you show on the outside nothing. Kalten brand, as the expression is used by Moshe Rabbeinu. Then the outside is ice, and the inside is fire. And he expected of his chassidim the same, that they should serve their Eibishter in a way there should be no tumul, no rash, and no shturim, and no nothing. So, when this chassid exclaimed in the middle of the Megillah, Feh klipa, all the chassidim present were certain that the next day the Megilah Rebbe would not let him read the Megillah again, because he crossed a line that the Megilah Rebbe didn't allow people to cross. Comes the next morning, the day of Purim, the Megilah Rebbe comes to shul, and everyone is waiting for the Megilah Rebbe to replace the Balkriya with somebody else. And the Megilah Rebbe says that he should go again, which was a big surprise. Because knowing the Megilah Rebbe's preciseness and the Megilah Rebbe's exactness, and the Megilah Rebbe was a Gvura Dike Rebbe, it was not believable that he would give this person, so to speak, a second chance. Anyway, he chose him to read the Megillah again, and he went and he read the Megillah, and so on. I don't know if the next day he said again Feh klipa. I would imagine that he was able to control himself. After davening, the Megilah Rebbe turns around and he says, Medaftoch geb Megillah geld. It's a minig yisol terehi to give Megillah geld. It's an Inyan to give money to the Balkeda, Megillah geld. And the Megilah Rebbe put on a golden arendel. A golden arendel, a gold coin, a chveis, is like $1,000 or a lot of money, $500. It's not $10 or even $50. It was a very, very substantial. In that minyan, there were 100 ashirim, 100 yidden who were well-to-do. And if the Megilah Rebbe put on a golden arendel, they could not be outdone. So they each put down a golden arendel. And this Malamed became wealthy in a day, Pashat Kipchuta, in a day. Later, the Megilah Rebbe explained that everybody who suspected that he would replace the Balkeda is right, that in the normal conditions he would have chosen somebody else to lay by day because of this outburst. But this Malamed had a bracha for the Alter Rebbe for Ashiras. Alter Rebbe, your bracha should be wealthy. But if you're going to be an Ashir, you have to make a kli. To become rich, you have to do something. And he was a Malamed, and he didn't think past Malamdes. So there was not a possibility for the bracha of the Alter Rebbe to be mature, to be realized. So the Megilah Rebbe said, I wanted that the Alter Rebbe's bracha shouldn't be for naught. So b'meila, therefore, I overlooked this outburst, allowed him to read the Megillah by day, so I was able to give him Megillah geld, and then the rest of the Gevirim also gave him Megillah geld. And Misham Nesasha, this was the beginning of the Ashiras of this Yid. I just want to tell one more story. It's really not a story, it's a vort that is extraordinary from our Rebbe. There are, of course, many, many Purim stories with the Rebbe. The most famous of all is the Maas of Tafshin Yud Gimel with Stalin, Yimach Shmei V'Zechrei, where the Rebbe later, many, many years later, 38 years later, in 1991, in Tafshin and Aleph, acknowledged in an edited text that what Chassidim thought was a fact, that the Maamar had to do with the Nefilas Seder at that time, Yimach Shmei Stalin. But that's not the story that I'm going to share. What I want to share is as follows. The first Purim of the Rebbe's Nesias, was Tafshin Yud Aleph, obviously. And the Fabrengen was very intimate. The Eilim was very small. I mean, the small Eilim in Lubavitch lasted a relatively short time, a year or 2 or 3. But at that time, the Eilim was still, it was Pashat Hamish. It was like a kiddush, a shul with chassidim and a rebbe, but it was so small, so intimate that the grandeur that comes along from the Reiv Am Hadas Melech was not present. But the Rebbe was there clearly, and then of course there were Chassidish Yidden, and the Rebbe took a lot of mashke, a gewalt mit mashke, Kedarki Bakedish, and a lot of the Chassidim said l'chaim, including Rabbi Mentlik. Rabbi Mentlik got shikir. The Rebbe, Rabbi Mentlik was such a bottled kerid that Rabbi Mentlik was in a state of his pashtus, and the Rebbe expressed himself something to the effect as mottel. That's what the Rebbe calls Rabbi Mentlik, mottel. As mottel is holding in this madrege, that's extraordinary. There's a story about that which happened at that Fabrengen. But what I want to share is this. Ubagdoma. For the first year after the Frierdiker passed away, the Rebbe did not say any Maimorim. And Chassidim asked, and the Rebbe didn't respond. The Rebbe used to say, in dem inyan vet eichet zayin hashina, there would be a change. The Rebbe once told Rabbi Simpson, es darf doch nicht sein, darf geitzter, it doesn't have to be now, it could be at a later date, and so on. But Yud Shvat, Tov Shin, Yud Alf, the Rebbe said a Maimeh Basi Legani. But the Maimeh Basi Legani, the Rebbe said in the middle of a Sikha. Right? You could see the Hanocha, and you could also hear the tape. The Rebbe begins, and the Maimeh was the Rebbe hat reis gegeben for sein Yem HaHilula, hebt on Basi Legani, right? And the Maimeh which the Rebbe gave out for his Hilula, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out for his Hilula, he begins Basi Legani, and then the Rebbe begins Basi Legani Achesi Kala, and so on. If you look in the Anochas, if you look in the Sichas, which are of course now all published, you will see that that's how the Maimorim were for that entire year. There was no Niggin before Dach. There was no song Niggin before Chassidus. The Rebbe would say a Sicha, and then after speaking the Sicha, he would go he would segue from the Sicha into the Maimeh. The first time the Rebbe asked for a Niggin, Kedem Dach, was Yud Beis, the following Yud Shvat, Tov Shin, Yud Beis, the Rebbe asked for a Niggin, and they sang a Niggin, and the Rebbe said a Maimeh. But until then, that year, the Seder was the Rebbe would start speaking a Sicha, and then at some point in the Sicha would go into the Maimeh. Sometimes the Sicha was literally a line, Mamish Avort, and sometimes the Sicha was a few minutes. One of the most poignant of these pre-Maimeh Sichas, and the Seder by the Rebbe at that time was, the Maimeh would be at the beginning of the Fabrengen. The Rebbe actually once explained why he does it. The Maimeh for quite a few years was the very beginning of the Fabrengen, and the Rebbe said why? Because a Maimeh is difficult and you have to concentrate. So he wants to get the Maimeh out of the way so people can relax and enjoy the Fabrengen, because the most intense part of the Fabrengen, which is the Amidas Dach, has already been done. And of course, in the years later, that changed completely, where the Maimeh would not be the first Sicha, it would be one of the earlier Sichas, but not the first Sicha, and then much, much later, the Maimeh could have been near the end of the Fabrengen Mamish. But in the beginning, that was the Seder. So Purim, of that year, Purim Tavshin, there's actually a tape. There's not a tape of the whole Fabrengen, which is a tape of much of the Fabrengen, a part of the Fabrengen. And you can hear the tape of the very beginning of the Fabrengen. And this is what the Rebbe said. And you have to listen to the audio because it's so moving, it's so powerful when you hear it in the original. And there's a tape of it. You don't have to just read it. You can listen to the Rebbe speaking. I'm going to chazir it, but it's not at all the same thing, of course. The Rebbe began by saying that in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, our minhag is that we say in the davening uvechein, right? In the bracha of Ata Kodesh, you say v'chein tein kovid, v'chein tein pachtocha, v'chein tein kovid, v'chein yiskadesh. So in many Sidurim, there's only 3 of v'cheins. In our Siddur, there's a 4th of a chen. And if I'm not wrong, it's the first. My memory is not working so good. The v'chein tein pachtocha is the 2nd. The v'chein tein kavod lamech is the 3rd. V'chein yiskadesh is the 4th. What's the first one? I can't remember. But there's a 4th of a chen. And in many nuschais hatfilah, they don't say the 4th of a chen. We do. So it says in the Zohar that the 4 of a chen, or the 3 of a chen, or the 4th of a chen, which you have in the davening Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, is based on the fact that in Tanakh you have the word uvachein 4 times, which is something which you see in some Sfarim. The Tur is, of course, famous for this. The Tur, Baal Turim, is famous when a word is written in the Torah. He tells you how many times it's in the Tanakh, and each time it's there, and there's great precision to this. It's Torah, it ain't safe. So the Zohar said that because in Tanakh there's 4 uvacheins, therefore there's 4 uvacheins in the davening of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So what is the reason that we say it and other people don't? Because the 4th uvachein is the uvachein from the Megilah Esther, where Esther Hamalka says to Mordechai that she should gather the Jewish people together and they should fast and they should do tshuva and so on. And then she says, Gaman even not a will also fast. Uvachein ave el hamelech asher leich hadas. And therefore, and under those circumstances, I'm going to approach the king asher leich hadas unlawfully. And the king may kill me, and the king may embrace me, but I'm going to go. So this uvachein is ave el hamelech asher leich hadas, unlawful. So the way it's understood is that in the Megilah Esther, I'm going to talk about this momentarily. In the Megilah Esther, Hamelach means the Eibishter. In the Megilah Esther, Bechlal, Hamelach means, the Gemara says Hamelach means the Eibishter. And of course it says also in Svarim that Achashverosh also means the Eibishter, because Achashverosh is from the words Hamelach she'achris v'reishis shalei. The end and the beginning is his. And Chassidus such as Chosh v'Rosh, to speak and to be silent. We learned it last year, I think, in the Maamar that we did for Purim in these classes here. So Hamelech goes on the Eibishter. And Esther says to Mordechai, Ovei el Hamelech asher leich hadas, that Esther Hamalka, which goes on Yidden, and specifically Yidden as they're on the Maamar of Golus, says to Mordechai, I'm going to go to the king even though it's leich hadas, I'm not worthy. So therefore, some Kehilas Kadishas B'Yisrael don't say this, because you don't want to say that you're coming to the king leich hadas, without zchus, without deserving it. But our minig is, based on this zayah, that we dafka say the 4th of the chen. And again, if I'm not wrong, the 4th of the chen is the first. The first one of the chen is Kaddish. That's what it goes. The chen is Kaddish. Then it's the chen tein pachtacha. Then it's the chen tein kovid. And the chen tzadikim. That's the 4th. But the first one is the chen is Kaddish. And this the chen is Kaddish, I believe, is the added one. Dafka first. So the Rebbe says that the Zohar says that there's a v'chein of Hashanah Yom Kippur, which is Ashlei Chados. And he explained that when it comes special times, and you have to approach the Eibishter, and it's Ashlei Chados, you have no schus, you have no merit, you're not entitled, you're not deserving, you're not worthy. But when action sech, you insist and you force yourself to enter into the king, even if it's Ashlei Chados, so that they let you in. In other words, then you're not tshuva, then you're not tzara, the inyan ha-b'tochin, the inyan of Yiddish akshanas. That's what the Rebbe explains basically. And when the Rebbe said it, he said it very, very emotionally, with incredible amount of regesh, when he made this exposition. And then, after the Rebbe spoke, it must have been 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, the Rebbe says, Uvachein, Ovei el hamelech asher leich hadas, and then he right away begins the Maamar, Veki b'layhu demes asher echelu laseis, and the first time the Rebbe starts, he breaks down, and then he calms down, he catches himself for a few seconds, and he starts the second time, and he says, I'm Maamar. Put him Tavshin Yud Aleph. And that Maamar is Kulei Chiddush, that's real the Rebbe's Maamar. You cannot say it's a Maamar based on the earlier Rabbeim, even though it's officially based on the Maamar of Pei Zayin. In any case, this is the Hakdama, yeah? Stories about Purim. Now let's talk about Purim itself. Purim, it says in Tikkun Ezeir, is compared to Yom Kippur. Moreover, not only is Purim compared to Yom Kippur, that we actually say that Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim, that Purim is higher and that Yom Kippur is lower, and it's only that Yom Kippur is a day like Purim. This says in Zohar, in Tikkun Ezeir. And of course, this becomes very, very problematic, very difficult to understand. How could you compare a day when people are like Malchus, with Chamishi Nuyim and all the rest, to a day of Mishteh, Simche, and Mishleach Mones, and Matanos Lavyenim, and Adalayada? Purim, the antithesis is the other extreme of what the Yom Kippur is. So of course there's a number of very, very important corollaries between Purim and Yom Kippur. And the most obvious is Goydel. Right, in the Chumash, they would choose 2 goats, 2 seirim, and they would use a Goydel. Which one is going to be La Hashem, which one is going to be La Zozah. And of course, the point is that what difference does it make? The two goats are shekel, they cost the same amount of money, they look the same, they're the same size. Who cares which one? And they dafka used a goydel, and they used golden ptakim, golden papers, notes. And one was written Lazozel, and one was written Hashem, and they put them into a kilfi, into a hat, and then King Kohen would pull them out and put them on each goat. And there was a special Megilah, a special schus, if the one on the right had Lashem and the one on the left had Lazozel. So it's explained in Chassidus that the goydel of Yom Kippur was not about the fact that they couldn't figure out another way to choose which goat, but has to do with the inyan that the Eibishter on Yom Kippur relates to the Yidden from the Madrega of goydel. And from the Madrega of goydel, Yidden are all wonderful and all perfect and all extraordinary and so forth and so on. And Purim, of course, also involves the goydel. Haman HaRasha is also goydel. The way you understand this story based on the Gemara and so on is that the goydel that Haman HaRasha throws is what we call in our culture the Venapechu. It's the basis for the incredibleness. Why? Because Haman calculates. What does he calculate? He calculates that anybody who tries to hurt the Jewish people, because the Jewish people's sin failed. Before him you had Nebuchadnezzar, and you had Madayim Paros, and you had Mitzrayim, you had a lot of Goyim, and yet Sancherev, Ashur, who tried to destroy the Jewish nation, and they failed. So Haman reasoned that you could never destroy the Jewish people based on their demerits, because the Eibishter loves them. So he decided instead to throw a goydel. Goydel is chance, and he'll see how it falls. If the goydel falls on a good day, then he will not destroy the Jewish people, because the Eibishter is telling him that he's going to protect them. And if the goydel falls on a bad day, then he's going to know the Eibishter is not paying attention, well, to destroy the Jewish people. And he throws a goydel, and it falls on other, and Haman is samach simcha gedel. What's he so excited about? Moshe Rabbeinu died. And of course the question becomes that Moshe Rabbeinu was also born in the Chedesh. So the answer is that Haman didn't know that. So of course the kasha is a pashat. If Haman or Mazla Delay knew when Moshe Rabbeinu died, how could he not have known when Moshe Rabbeinu was born? And the answer is he knew when Moshe Rabbeinu was born. But he didn't think it was a big deal. Why? Because when you're born, you're not a tzaddik. Only when you pass away, you're a tzaddik. So Moshe Rabbeinu was born on Zayin Adar Behechatesa, so it was yet to be determined whether he's a tzaddik or not. But what Haman did not know, lo yoda, is that Moshe is different than all tzaddikim. Moshe is different than all tzaddikim, that kedai yema leide lechapa yema misa, nismala abai is kula oira. In the case of Moshe Rabbeinu, because he was a nasi b'Yisrael, and in Neshama Klolos, his birth is a gevaldike simcha. And this is what Haman didn't know. Haman didn't know that the birth of a Rebbe is a schus, just like, and even greater than perhaps, or in some ways, as the histalkos of a Rebbe, because the tzaddik is born and the room is filled with light. That was his mistake. But he threw the goydel, and based on this goydel, he determined that the Eibishter was smiling at the Jewish people. He decided to do Rachmanos an Kloya. What's the fact? The fact is that this was the one occasion that if Haman had gone the other route, it would have worked. If Haman had gone the route of his predecessors to destroy the Jewish people based on their sins, it would have worked because of Nishtachavol Etzelem of Nebuchadnezzar and Nehenu Misudas Shalei Serosh. So that's the Venapechu. Haman does something different than all the predecessors before him because he saw their failure. And this was the one case where what they would have tried would have worked, but he tried something different and it failed. He throws a goydel, and on the Madrega of goydel, like it says in the Maamar Chassidus, Ach Esav liYankev, Oyev es Yankev es Esav Sanesi, that Yankev and Esav are the same, and nevertheless, the Eibishter's love for Yankev and hatred for Esav is absolute because it comes from Madrega of goydel, which is L'mayla Mitam V'das. And that's one of the basic similarities between Yom Kippur and Purim. Both of them have at their base Yom Kippur and the Avodah. And Purim in the story and in the name. Purim means Al Shem HaPur, Al Shem HaGoydel. The idea of Goydel, that the Eibishter's relationship to the Yidden is random and chance, also meaning to say that there's a Madrega where it's not logical the Eibishter favors the Jews and so on, and he prefers us mitat Goydel, that is free choice. And that's one of the similarities between Purim and Yom Kippur. And of course the second one is, as you'll see momentarily in our Maamar, that they both have to do with Nesinas HaTeirah, with the giving of the Teirah. Yom Kippur has to do with Nesinas HaTeirah, because the Eibishter gave us the Luchas Ashniyas, right? The first Luchas were given on Shivas HaB'Tammuz and they were broken. And the second Luchas were given on Yom Kippur. And the second luchas, which are given on Yom Kippur, are called the luchas of tshuva, right? Which responds to Yidden's doing tshuva. And Purim, Yidden said, Kimu v'kiblu, nasa v'nishma. They accept to do Yiddishkeit all over again. Kimu v'kiblu, masharecheidu lasas. And the Gemara says that what Yidden started by Har Sinai, when they said nasa v'nishma, was culminated 1,000 years later when the Yidden in the darkest of times, in the worst of times, declared their loyalty to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that now the Torah is theirs for sure. And that's a second similarity between Yom Kippur and Purim. The first is the concept of Goydel, and the second is the concept of something having to do with accepting the Torah. However, it says in Maamar that there's a difference. What's the difference? By Yom Kippur, there was the element of Kafa Leim Har Kigigis. That the Eibishter revealed so much of himself that, so to speak, he took away their choice. He left them free will. But what kind of free will do you have if you see what a lakus is? The opposite is nothing, relatively speaking, and nothing absolutely. So obviously a Yid was going to choose Torah and mitzvahs and the Eibishter over the other derech. So there wasn't really free will. So the Gemara says, Mikan meidor rabba le'iraisa. Any Jew at any time can come along and say, I was forced. I was tricked when I accepted the Torah. I said Nasa v'nishma erev matan Torah, but I said Nasa v'nishma because the lakus was revealed. But only Hader Kiblua b'mei Achashverosh. That argument only works till Hamza v'Achashverosh. Why? Because the Hamza v'Achashverosh was exactly the opposite extreme. Anoichi haster aster pane b'yemu. The Eibishter was hiding, and the Rebbe was speaking about Shem Tov that the hester is alein behester. The concealment is also concealed, and you think Samam Cheshach le'er l'Cheshach Rahman al-Litzlan. It was a very dark gullus. And when Yidden reaffirmed, when Yidden committed themselves, when Yidden chose to accept the Torah, again, this did not have the element of kafalem hakikis. There was no coercion. Fakert, if there was a coercion, the coercion was to run away and change your passport from Yehudi to Ivri, and Achashverosh would have left him alone. So Purim is the culmination of Yom Kippur, and it's even higher. And that's the pshat, that Yom Kippurim, because Yom Kippur is only a beginning and Purim is an end. But in any case, the chassidus of Purim is unbelievable. One of the ideas which is mentioned in a number of Maimorim is that Purim and Yom Kippur are exactly the same except for one factor. That Yom Kippur is this factor inside the box, inside the Beis HaMikdash, inside rigidity, inside order and control, like by tzaddikim. And Purim is the same intensity, but outside the box, as it is for Anashim Kerkeinu, and so on and so forth, which is why Davoid is Adalayada, and so on and so forth. That's just Purim. Now we know, the Likutei Sichos Chelik Vav and other places, that the Megillas Esther never has the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The name of Hashem is never mentioned in the entire Sefer of the Megillah. And Hasbara Shebedavar is because the Megillas Esther is the place where Teva and Elokus converge. Why do you have to write the Eibish's name in the Sefer Torah? Because the Eibish is influencing the world. Now, what if there's a Hisgalus, that the world itself is Eibishter? Then the world is Eibishter, you don't have to say Havaya. And this can happen with Derech Nes. Hashem could reveal miracles in the world so that the world reflects the Eibishter. But it could also have a Derech Teva, that the world follows Elam Kivin Haganeg, what looks like a normal conduct of nature. Yet the way nature plays itself out turns out to be the greatest miracle of all, Neis HaMelubish B'Teva. A miracle which is totally concealed in nature, and yet you see clearly the Yad Hashem. So it says in the Rebbe Sichos that the reason there is no mention of the Eibishter's name in the Megillah Esther, because every word is the Eibishter. The whole creation is the Eibishter. And that's the Chiddush of Megillah, Purim, that the Teva itself becomes a Lakus. Now, I mentioned before that every time it says Hamelech, it means the Eibishter. It says in the Gemara. It also says in Svad, every time it says Achashverosh, it means the Eibishter, like it says, I think it's in the Sefer Me'eriyed, which is a Kabbalah Sefer, because of the principle of Achres V'Reishes Shalei, and so on. But when you read the Megillah, you read it as a story, as a narrative. One of the things which is interesting about Chassidus B'chlal, and the Chassidus on the Megillah Esther, and there's an awful lot of Chassidus on the Megillah Esther, is that you read the story of Esther, And then you learn Memory Chassidus. And the Memory Chassidus don't go from the worldly level to the godly level, they go straight to the godly level. When you learn the Bechlal Memory Chassidus on Psukim, and when you learn Memory Chassidus on Megillah Esther, the Chassidus of the Megillah starts off Bashamayim. So when you learn a Maimach Chassidus from the Megillah Esther, HaMelech means the Eibishter, finished. Not it means the Eibishter, also it means the Eibishter. So in this episode that we mentioned earlier, where Haman comes to the palace because he wants to hang Mordechai, and at the same night, and without beknownst to Haman, Balayla hu nadadosh nas HaMelech Malchus Shalela Machashvedesh, was the Eibishter Vayachal and a Mashal, cannot sleep. And he's up all night. And because he's up, he's paranoid, he's worried, he's nervous, he's afraid. And Haman shows up at the palace. So he comes into Chatzar Beis HaMelech HaChitzenu, where he's allowed to trespass without being punished. And Achashverosh asks that he should come in, and he comes in, and the Eibishter says to him, Malases Be'ish, Asher HaMelech Chafetz B'Karei, and of course, and so on. So there's the story of Pashtus. Achashverosh, Haman, Mordechai, not being able to sleep. Zeresh, the gallows, and so on. But there's also the Pnimius, that Haman goes on the Eibishter. I'm sorry, Achashverosh goes on the Eibishter, HaMelech goes on the Eibishter, Haman goes on Klipa, and Mordechai goes on Gedusha, and so on. But when you learn in Chassidus, one of the things that's so beautiful about the way it's transmitted in Chassidus is that you learn the Chatchila L'mayla. Chassidus doesn't say, this is the Pshat, but this is deeper. Chassidus, the Chatchila gives you the Chassidish Pshat. There's a story which I don't remember, but the Teichen Asipa was that a great chassid of the Alter Rebbe became a chassid when he heard the Alter Rebbe learn a pasuk. I think it was on the Megillah Esther, and his question was, how do you have this and this L'mayla? In the Ilmus Hayanim, he was very impressed that a Rebbe wouldn't only explain Teda al pi Pnimius Hayanim also. He would explain Teda only al pi Pnimius Hayanim as if that was the only truth. And this Maimid is no exception, yeah? That Haman says, Yaveu, Levush, Malchus, and Sus, and Keser, to Achashverosh. This is Klipa telling the Eibush that this is what you need to do for Kiddush. And the way it plays itself out in the story is also explained in the similar light. And that's how this Maimed is going to go. This entire Maimed is going to explain these details. And this is what happens in this Maimed, and in a lot of the Maimorim, or old Maimorim, of Chassidus, on Purim, where you don't explain the Maimed al pi Chassidus also. The Maimed is Chatchil Chassidus. And this is true in Torah and in Tanakh especially, but especially in the Sefer of Esther, because on the outside, the Sefer of Esther never mentions Hashem, doesn't say his name. Pardon me, it makes no direct reference to him. It just seems like a power play, a story of politics and power and a rise and a fall and the kinds of things that happen historically over and over and over again. And it's a part of Teda. That every single detail of this story is a Gili Alakuz, it's a revelation of the Eibishter. First of all, on the practical level, how Teva played out, how nature plays out the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And second of all, on a spiritual level, where the story of Esther and the players of Esther reveal the Pnimiyas HaTorah, the Neshama of the Torah. So let's begin. Let's read just the Pasuk, and I'll talk some more after I read the first lines. That Haman comes to Achashverosh with permission from the Chatzar HaChitzonu inward. And Achashverosh asks him, Ma nasa le'ish asher malases le'ish asher HaMelech chafetz b'karei, what should be done to a man whom the king wishes to honor? And of course, I said to you before, and he offers the following: Yaveu, Levush, Malchus. They should bring a garment of royalty, which the king actually wore. V'sus, on the horse, which the king actually rode on. The crown of the king should be placed on his head. So now, before we move on, I just want to share that in the next pasuk, Haman mentions the levush and the sus, the garment and the horse, and forgets the crown. And then a couple of psukim after that, Vayemer HaMelech el Haman kachas halevush v'asus kasher dibarta v'asei kain leMordechai haYehudi hayeshiv b'shar HaMelech al tapil dover mikela asher dibarta. that Ahasuerus says to Haman, take the horse and the tunic, the shirt, and the keser disappears. So on this itself is a gewaldige chassidus. And without going into the specifics, which I'm going to mention soon, and a little bit I discussed in this Maamar, but in other Maamorim, in Shari'ed and other places, this is discussed at length, that sus represents kelim. Kelim. Oisius. And the levush represents levushim makifim. And the keser represents pnimius hamakif. In other words, they all represent inyanim which are higher than Seder Ishtashlos. The sus is the kelim, which is higher than Seder Ishtashlos. The levush is the eretz, which is higher than Seder Ishtashlos. And the keser is pnimius of Seder Ishtashlos. Pnimius of higher than Seder Ishtashlos. So Haman, which is Elam Ateu, says to Achashverosh, which is the Eibishter, to take the sus and the levush and the keser and give it to Mordechai, and Mordechai's tikkun. And that's the way the Megilah Esther in general goes, and that's how this pasuk is explained, that there's an interface between Klipa and Kedusha, and Klipa on the outside is higher, and Kedusha is lower, but Bepnimis Hanyanim, Kedusha is the Kavana, Kedusha is the right thing, is the truth, and Klipa isn't. So when Klipa is defeated by Kedusha, Klipa says to the Eibishter, I will give to Kedusha Sasus v'Salavush. So Haman, which is Teyu, says to the Eibishter to take the sus and the levush and the keser, and immediately the Eibishter tells them take the sus and the levush. What happens to the keser? So Bekitz and Nimrus, the answer is that it's true that Teyu is higher than Tikkun. Klipa has a higher shadish than Kedusha. And therefore there's a whole process of Avedas Habirurim, where Klipa needs to take, or Kedusha needs to take away from Klipa. And then there are things which Klipa never had a hold on in the first place, and that's the Keser. Haman is thinking that since Teyu is higher than Tikkun, and Klipa gives its Nitzutz Kedusha, to Kedusha it should give the Keser also. So the Eibishter says to Haman, Hezachain. The Sus, which is the Kelim of Teyu, you could give to Kedusha. The Levush, which is the Eidus of Teyu, you could give to Kedusha. But the Keser Malchus, which is called Pnimius HaKeser, Keser Malchus was never in the Reshus of Kedusha, of Klipa in the first place. It was only in the Reshus of Kedusha. And therefore, Mordechai does not get the Keser Malchus from Haman. Mordechai gets the Keser Malchus directly from the Eibishter. That's how this pasuk is explained in Chassidus. Okay? Our Maamar is going to connect all of these three things, Levush and Sus and Keser, to Nesina Satera and Kabbalah Satera, because that's the spirit of this Maamar. But aside, the point that I shared with you says in a lot of places, in Chassidus, says in Shari'ed, and now let's learn the Maamar. I'll start again from the beginning, okay? Yaveu, Haman said, let's bring Levush Malchus, a royal garment. Ashalov, Veshbehamelech, which the king has worn. Vesus, and a horse. Asharocha, which the king has ridden on. Vashanit, and Keser Malchus Bereshe, the crown of the Eibishter, of the king, should be placed on Mordechai's head, says the Alter Rebbe Hinei, Inyan Levush Malchus. He doesn't at all mention the story. He goes straight to the Pnimius. The idea of the garment which the king wore is Inyan Masha Kosu, what says by the Eibishter. Havaya Moloch, the Eibishter kings, but in order for him to be king over the world, Geyus Lavesh, he puts on a garment of Gaiva. Shenislavish Belavush Geyus, the Eibishter puts on a garment of Gaiva, Liyas Melech HaElan, to become the king over the world. And of course, there's so much chassidus on these words, on Levush Malchus and Havaya Moloch Geyus Lavesh, and basically the point is that by the Eibishter everything is backwards, is the opposite of what it is by people. By people, when a person puts on a levush of gaiva, he's going from a lower level to a higher level. By the Eibishter Havaya Moloch Geyus Lavesh means Hashem lowers himself to be a Bal Gaiva. Hashem has nothing to do with the world. And Havaya Moloch Geyus Lavesh, he puts on a garment of gaiva so that he should have enough of a relationship with the world, to be a king over the world, but derech makif. In other words, the garment is not a concealment over the Eibishter. The garment is not a symptom of the Eibishter. The garment brings the Eibishter to have some relationship with the world. And the garment is gaiva. The idea that Hashem is above you is a yerida. The idea that the Eibishter is about gaiva, geos, compared to you is a Levush. And that's the pshat, Levush Malchus. The garment that the Eibishter wears in order to be a king over the world. And of course, a king is a makif, king is melech b'yafi etach, a king is melech shmei nikra aleim, makifim. So the Levush Malchus represents that the Eibishter lowers himself enough to be higher than us. And that's the Levush Malchus. And then he continues, V'sus asher achav alav melech, the horse which the king rode. Says the Rebbe. Who in Yin Mashakasa Matan Teda, like it says in Tanakh, about what happened. The Eibishter gave us the Teda, Kitir Kaval Susecha, the Eibishter rides on his horse, Marakivesecha Yeshua, so the chariot, which the Eibishter rides, doesn't even Yeshua. And again, all this is explained, every single word is explained at length in Chassidus, and in Shari'eda, and so on and so forth. Yeah? But here it doesn't just say that the Sus is a vehicle which brings the Eibishter into the world. It connected specifically to Teda, to Matan Teda. And you'll see in the Maamar that all three things are going to be connected to Matan Teda. But let me just clarify, what's a sus? What's a horse? A horse is used to ride. Why can't the person walk? And of course the answer is because on a horse you can go much faster. From the Mamaisim with the Alter Rebbe Yadua, a famous story with the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe Chassid, who had a son who was very talented and went off the right way and became a jockey, a horse racer. So when he came to the Alter Rebbe asked him, what's better, a fast horse or a slow horse? So he's a bit surprised. Alter Rebbe understood much about horse racing, which itself was a surprise to him. The Alter Rebbe showed him that he knows the business. And then the Alter Rebbe asks him, what's better, a fast horse or a slow horse? So he looks at the Alter Rebbe in surprise, and he says, of course a fast horse. So the Alter Rebbe says, yeah, but if you go on a slow horse and you go off the right path, since you're going slowly, you get less lost. When you're going on a fast horse and you're going the wrong way, you get lost very quickly. So he said to the Alter Rebbe, yeah, Rebbe, about mechaptzach. When you realize you're on the wrong way, you can come back much quicker. What this chassid did not realize, what this young man did not realize, this was the whole point. And the Alter Rebbe went into dveikis, into a trance, and he said, Amachaptzach, when you realize. And this Yid realized that Rebbe was talking to him, that he was the fast horse that went very far off the derech. But as Machaptzach, he can come back very quickly, and of course that's the end of the story. So a horse is a merkava, is a chariot on which the Eibishter rides, but a horse has a speed, and that's the mashal of a sus from akifim, that it's kalim, it's oisius, that brings a lakus very quickly from a very high madrega. And derech agav, you have in the Maimorim that the Eibishter has a number of merkavas, right? You have the kruvim, which are keravia. Keravia means like a little boy. You have below that you have chanech, matat. Then you have keruvia, and then of course you have the merkava hel yena, the atzilus, which is adam, and hard and atzilus is sus. A sus is also a merkava which carries a lakus, but it goes very quickly. And higher than sus is a tzvi, deime, deidil tzvi, el efer ha'yolam, which you have in the Maamar of Pesach, that a deer is so fast that he's above Seder Shtashos completely, he's even faster than a horse. And all of these things are different madregas of Merkava. Here, Haman says to take the sus, which is Chitzenis HaKeser, I suppose. It's a very high level on which a lakus rides. And like I said, in the Maamar Chassidus, it explains that the sus is oisius that carry a lakus from the madrega of makif. So we explained Levush Malchus, and we explained sus. And in the Maimorim, they explain the words ki tirka val susecha, the idea of merkava, and then the markavesecha Yeshua has explained that it's a high madrega in keser, shin ayin hayden, and so on. But then we continue, line 11. V'ashanitan keser malchus beresh. Haman also proposes that we should give Mordechai HaTzadik, Mordechai HaYehudi, the crown which the king wore to be placed on his head. So what's the crown of Pnimius Tanyam? And again, the Alter Rebbe doesn't start with the pshat and go to the Pnimius. The Pnimius is his pshat. Hu inyan masha kosov, the crown of the king is what says in the pasuk in Shir HaShirim, Ba'atara sha'at alei imei b'yem chasanasei, which is Matan Teda, the Gemara says. B'yem chasanos, b'yem simchas libe, b'yem chas, the Gemara says, b'yem chasanos is Matan Teda. The crown which his mother crowns him in, which is the day of his wedding, which is Matan Teda. And of course the wedding is the formal marriage, the Edison, and then B'yem Simchas Libe is the intimate marriage, which is much, much deeper, which is going to be when Mashiach comes. So, you know what says in Chassidus, yeah? That Ime, who's the Eibishter's mother? Ba'atara she'atar le'Ime, goes on Yidden. Yidden are the Eibishter's mother. There's a whole sugi in Chassidus about Achaisi biti Achaisi Imi. I'm forgetting the first part of the pasuk, but the Shlomo HaMelech it's the very end of the Sefer Shir HaShirim, and Shlomo HaMelech is celebrating, and the words finished. I forgot the beginning of the pasuk about Torah she'at le'Imei b'yem chasanasa b'yem simchas libei, and it's explained in Gemara and in Chassidus that Imei goes on Yidden. The Yidden are called the mother of the Eibishter. Now, since when are Yidden called the mother of the Eibishter? The Eibush doesn't have a mother, the Eibush doesn't have a father, and of course the idea of Ime is Bina, higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. Kuchabrichu or Lakus is Zoh, is the Midas Avatil, says the masculine in a Lakus, and Ime, which is Bina, goes on Yidden. And the crown which the Eibush wears comes from Yidden, the way Yidden are Kvayachal, higher than a Lakus, above a Lakus. And in some places in Chassidus and in Kabbalah it's brought that the Bina, which is also called Aim, is called Tshuva. And by Torah she'at le'Imei means the Keach HaTshuva, we put the crown Kvayachal on the Meibishter. So all three things, the Levush brings the Eibishter in proximity of the world, but derech Makiv. The Sus is the Merkava, which brings the Eibishter into this world. But the fact that a horse runs quickly is a mushal for bringing a Lakus higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. And the crown comes from Imei, the way Yidden or a Madreg of higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. And like I said, in this Maamar, all of these things are going to be explained, and they're going to be explained in the context of the idea that we got the Teda once, we got the Teda twice. So the Rebbe continues and he says on line 14, Kihine kol ha'bechines sheniz gal b'matan Teda, everything that was revealed when the Eibishter gave us the Teda, gave us the Teda, nizgal gam kein bepurim b'mei Mordechai, was revealed also in the times of Purim, times of Mordechai HaYehudi. Shenem, like it says in the pasuk, and of course we all know this from the Maamar, from Tafshin Nun Beis. V'ki bel HaYehudim meis asher echelu laseis, that the Yidden reaffirmed or finalized their acceptance of the Teda which they had begun to do when the Eibishter gave us the Teda at Har Sinai. Ki b'matan Teda, when the Eibishter gave us the Teda, Shal Yisrael Nasa v'nishma, when Yidden said Nasa v'nishma, it was a chelu laseis shayelak haschol, it was only a beginning. And b'mei Mordechai Gemara Kabbalah, when the Eibishter, when the Yidden accepted the Teda a second time, at the time of the Mordechai Yehudi, it was an end. And of course, in the Maamar of Kibbul HaYehudim, the Rebbe proposes that there's two Bimei Mordechais. One during the time of the Gzeira, when it came from Mesiras Nefesh, one is after the Nes, when it becomes from Kosses Lamor, from the fact that you find yourself in Golos. So it says in Chassidus, including in the Taka and the Kibbul HaYehudim, in Perek Daled, that Purim is higher than Matan Teda. As the pasuk says and the Gemara explains it, that Purim, Matan Teda is only a beginning, and Purim is an end. So the Rebbe, of course, asks the Kasha, how could Purim be higher than Matan Teda? Matan Teda, Yidden are in the highest of level, they just came out of Mitzrayim, there was such Kelis to Brakim, and so on and so forth. Purim and Yidden were in a very low level, how could Purim be higher than Matan Teda? So the Rebbe explains. And the way the Rebbe says it, in other words, in certain Pratim, Purim are higher than Matan Teda, than Shavuos. And what's the word that the Rebbe offers? That by Purim, by Matan Teda, the Eibishter revealed himself. And the Eibishter's revelation made the Yidden's acceptance of the Teda something which you could argue was superimposed on them. That's why you have the Meidah, Rabba Leiraisa, that I discussed before. A Jew can always say it was forced. What happened then? Yidden were in a time when being a Jew was going to cost you your life. And the way the story is brought in Tereir from Alten Rebbe, and the only other one who brings it like this is the Megilah story from Yankev Melissa. And it could be that it says in earlier Sfara maybe that Haman was not killing Jews like Hitler killed Jews, indiscriminately. Haman was killing Yehudim. And remember, the traditional name of a Jew was not a Yehudi, the traditional name of a Jew was Ivri, Yevrei, Hebrew. And any Jew who would change his passport from Jew to Hebrew, from Yehudi to Ivri, would be off the hook. Because Haman was killing the Anshe Moshe, the people of Mordechai. Am Mordechai, yeah? What was Mordechai's crime? They nearly wouldn't bow. It's called Yehudi, not because he comes from the Shevet Yehuda, Faket, Mordechai Shevet Binyamin. He's called Yehudi, as the Gemara says, because he's Kefer Ba'aveda Zarah, denies idol worship. And then it's brought, anybody who's Kefer Ba'aveda Zarah, it's two Gemaras. Yeah? In Megilah it says it's Kefer Ba'aveda Zarah. And there's another Gemara, I forgot where it is, they call it Kefer Ba'aveda Zarah, is made of B'kol HaTeira Kula. You're automatically accepting the whole Teira. So, when Yidden adopted the title Yehudi, did a whole wonderful sikha. By the way, this is a good advertisement. Purim Tafshin Aleph. The second Purim that was in America, the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Purim sikha is very long. And he tells the whole story as a political power play. It's unbelievably poignant and unbelievably realistic. He tells the whole story about how Yidden try to be like Goyim and how it backfires. Because Yidden are different than Goyim. When Yid tries to be a Goy, it brings him all kinds of calamity. And when a Yidden acts like a Yid, then all the miracles begin to happen. But the story of Purim was that Haman was after those Jews who were called Yehudim, who were Kefer Ba'aveda Zarah, and therefore made the B'kol HaTeira Kula. And they had a recourse. They could run away, become an Ivri. The traditional name of the Jews was Ivri, and the reason the new name was created to identify the Jewish people, instead of Ivri, which means a foreigner, a griner, a fremde, the name Yehudi is because Ivrim began to assimilate. They went to Bavel and they were honored as smart people, and the Goyim respected them. They began to assimilate, began to enjoy Golos Rachman al-Islam. So Yidden who were not happy about this protested this by changing the name to the title Yehudi. And these were the people that Achashverosh tried to murder, tried to kill. Haman tried to kill. And they stood for a whole year, it says in Teira Eid, in a state of readiness of Mesiras Nefesh, and loy also behem machshavas chutz chas v'shalom, not one Jew for one moment thought a thought of running away and trying to save himself by becoming an Ivri, by assimilating, by hiding his Jewish identity, and so on. And this, of course, was the basis for the Nes, the Mesiras Nefesh of Yehudim, of Yidden. And therefore the Gemara says that Matan Torah is only a beginning, as Sesharei Chelu, and Purim is of a kibul as an end. And our Maamar is going to analyze this pasuk Yaveu Levush Malchus against that backdrop. How you have by Matan Torah, Levush and Sus and Keser, and how you have by Purim, when this was re-established, Levush and Sus and Keser. And we'll continue and we'll learn this in Mitzvah Hashem. We'll start next week.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.